first pick.
How's it going, everybody? It's Tyler tonight, just only me today. Kind of had a little bit of a thought process on how I wanted to proceed about, kind of recapping what we were doing in Texas with me and Will. Will did a fantastic job on the college side. So if you want to go ahead and read some of the stuff that he's put together and see some of the interviews that he made with some of the coaches out on the field post game, feel free to follow him at Overdue Sports on Twitter. Did a lot of fantastic stuff over the weekend, so I highly recommend following him if you have not done so already. But we've made Texas. We've made trying to make one of these Texas tournaments early in the season kind of just like a routine trip over the past couple of years. I started doing it in 2024. First time doing that was the Hagen Smith 17 strikeout game, and also Travis Baton just going absolutely crazy the following days after. And obviously last year we had a lot of fun too. So, this has been a very fun trip to make every single year. And I'm excited that we were able to do it again for a really talented tournament that we were taking part of at the Amegy Bank College Baseball Series with UCLA, Mississippi State, Arizona State, Texas A&M, Virginia Tech, and Tennessee. So, kind of just want to dive right into this a little bit. We're going to be running again solo tonight. No Jerry, it's just going to be me kind of going over some video, going over some notes that we had from over the weekend. Because, I've mentioned this before. I'm not full-time necessarily. I still have a day job. I still have other stuff I got to take care of. So it's been kind of tough, to kind of find time and write. And I'm definitely behind on a few things. So this was definitely an easier thing for me to do, is kind of just get on the podcast, do an episode, kind of go over everything, make it easy for you. And we'll touch on some national notes here at the end of the episode as well. Just to kind of get people understanding what's going on outside of what we saw in Texas. We're 3 weeks into the season, and there's some really big changes that have been made throughout the process. So, like I said, just want to try and make this an easier viewing. An easier way for me to do this is doing this, obviously, because finding time to write now has been pretty tough. So I want to try and get like the prep top 100 done in the next couple of weeks. And of course, like I had mentioned before, this is probably the easiest way for me to kind of convey my thoughts without, being 2 weeks late to writing something. So I want to do it for you guys, the viewers and the readers that keep up with us at home, on the road, wherever you may be. So kind of just want to start diving right in with UCLA. They had a very tough schedule coming into this, 3 SEC teams with Tennessee, Texas A&M, and then Mississippi State on the Sunday game, which was by far my game of the year. It might have been the best Sunday game I've ever seen in person. We've talked about before on some of the other podcasts with the college show where like UCF Miami that midweek a couple of weeks ago was an early contender for game of the year. I don't know if we're topping what we had with Mississippi State and UCLA on Sunday. It was a true heavyweight battle, something that you might end up seeing in Omaha later on this year if they happen to rematch, which if they do, I am all for it, But, besides that point, UCLA is just so deep offensively. Just looking up and down the lineup, obviously we've got 4 bats in our top 100 for the college side, and there's probably going to be more whenever we release a combined board here in a few weeks, if I ever find the time to get around to doing it. But, Roch Cholowsky, Mulivai, Levu, Roman Martin, Will Gasparino are the big 4 in this lineup. So I really want to get started with Roch first. And, you look at the stat line, 3 for 11, a home run, a double, 3 RBIs, 2 high-bay pitches. He looked a lot better in person than what the box score would suggest to you. Obviously, coming off a weekend against TCU where we went absolutely ham. This is a quieter weekend for him in terms of production, but there's a lot of stuff that he was doing that really helped the team out. It was a very good glove defensively. And we'll touch on that here in a little bit, but looking at what Cholowsky was able to do, he only whiffed twice throughout the whole weekend, one on the fastball, one on a slider. So if you're looking, obviously didn't walk at all over the weekend. He was pretty aggressive with chasing the first pitch. Most of the time, opposing pitchers wanted to pitch him away, which was working for most of the weekend. He did find himself chasing a bit aggressively. It was like 33% chase on the weekend. But the one time they did pitch to him was this little clip right here. So if you happen to be listening on audio or iTunes or anything like that, you're obviously not going to see the video. But if you haven't seen it already, it's on Twitter. Did a fantastic job on Twitter as well. I was kind of shocked at the amount of views and likes that it got. But we're talking about the number one player in the class, and just looking at the film, you can tell the swing is very short. It's very quick to the ball, and the fact that he's able to get so much power on it. He hit that ball at 105.5, 439. To think about the swing length and the fact that he was able to hit it that far and that hard is truly unbelievable. And that's kind of what you see from a talent of this caliber, and not to mention this is top nine, two outs, one on, chance to tie the game. This was truly one of the biggest moments of the early season for this UCLA ball club. And he stepped up and delivered very, very quickly. It was really impressive. I think it was a cutter that Ben Davis had left kind of just middle, and Roch just absolutely destroyed it. So, you got the mix of the bat the ball skills, the hit tools there, the power is obviously there. He had he was really prioritizing putting the ball in the air throughout the weekend. He also averaged 92.2 on exit velocities, which is pretty solid as well, considering the fact that he was pitched away a lot. The thing that really stood out to me though was the glove. There was a couple of really tough hops that he had to deal with on the dirt. One of them hit like the edge of the grass and really jumped on him. It was really impressive to see that he was able to adjust so easily and to be able to make these tough plays look pretty easy. And we've talked about it before. I've talked about how this is a very fluid glove, a very versatile glove, essentially. And it's one of the best that I've seen personally in my amateur scouting days. So, again, I understand, some people. I had made the statement where Roch Cholowsky is the best draft prospect since Paul Skeens, and I still stand by that. Because think about it, Paul Skeens in 2023 at this stage was not 1-1 material. And obviously at the end of the year, he goes 1-1, Dylan Cruz goes 1-2. So obviously, if you want me to make the more direct comparison, this is the best, hitting prospect that we've had since Dylan Cruz. But in terms of overall pedigree and kind of projecting towards the end of the season, I still believe Cholowsky is going to be the number one player at the end of this cycle, whether or not he goes 1-1. Completely in the air at this moment. And that's something I want to talk about is, in this age of draft strategy and bonus slot values, there's a non-zero chance that Cholowsky does not go to the White Sox. And that really kind of is going to be something we watch on throughout the year. And as we get closer to the draft, I think we'll have a better picture. But at this stage, we should always keep an open mind on what the White Sox can and will do on draft day. They have a history of kind of going after some high-end college guys at the very top of the class and then saving some money throughout the rest of the draft, kind of aiming for a higher-end prep in like the second or third round. You look at what they did last year where they get Billy Carlson kind of early, get him at slot value, but then you also get Jaden Fowlsky in the second round, which you got over slot, but then they saved some money in the sixth, seventh, eighth rounds to kind of help them out there. So, I think they kind of stick to that. That's kind of been their MO the past couple of years. So again, do not be shocked if Cholowsky at the end of the day is not the 1-1 pick. I would wager, 80% chance that he is at this stage, just based upon everything that I've kind of interpreted at the field. But at this stage, it's still too early to kind of confirm his luck, but he is the best player in this class. And again, I still stand by my comment of he is the best draft prospect since Paul Skeens. And that's, again, projecting towards the end of the year. So yeah, I'm going to stick by that and not waver off of that prediction. He is, again, just one of the best amateur prospects I've ever seen in person. And granted, my list is not as long as some of the other scouts in the community, but have to have high praise for the caliber player that he is. So moving on past him, going to go to Mulivai Levu, who he hit behind him in the lineup. Something that we noted in Mulivai Levu's blurred for the college top 100 was he kind of struggles with high velo a little bit. Still kind of the same thing. He had 5 lists on the weekend. 3 of them were on velo that were kind of up at his letters a little bit higher. So there is some stuff to kind of work out on that swing. The hands are a bit noisy. And admittedly, I don't think the swing is a finished product at this point. There is one swing where he hit a bomb off of Tegan Kuhns off 100. It was like 97 in, 112 out as a line drive screamer right to right field. And, you kind of look at the video here, which actually I don't think it's in here. However, we're still going to talk about it. The swing was kind of wonky where it looked like he really just caught it out in front. And it really cut off at the very end. I think there's going to be a swing change at some point in the next few years with his development. But when you look at what he's been able to bring, he has some bat the ball skills, has the power to really be a threat. And obviously, when he's a first baseman only, you kind of really need the bat to perform. So that's kind of where I'm at with Mulivai Levu. I think he does move better for a guy of his size and stature at first base, but obviously first base defense is not very valuable to begin with. You obviously look at some guys like Nick Kurtz, who really does provide first base defensive value. But again, that's very few and far between with some of these guys. So again, the bat really needs to perform. The biggest thing I kind of took away from Levu was he was very aggressive this weekend too. Didn't really walk. Did strike out a couple of times. Did a good job of kind of putting the ball in play. Had an average exit velocity of around 90, 91. But again, the 112-mile-an-hour rocket that he hit was probably the most impressive swing of the weekend for him. And again, I would wager he's somewhere closer to like the 3rd to 5th round for me at this stage. But I would wager that Mulivai does get about 7 figures, if not maybe slightly lower than that at this stage. Moving on past that, Rowan Martin. I've talked about him before, where he's a very selective hitter, really likes hammering the fastball. He did again do that as well. He had 5 hits on the weekend. There were times where I thought he was a little passive, whereas with Cholowsky and Levu, they were pretty aggressive. Martin really wasn't. He was able to hit a home run. It was like a 97 exit velocity, barely got over the fence, but he has the ability to backspin the baseball. Did a pretty good job with handling bat the ball skills as well. The biggest thing that really stood out to me was the defense. And granted, I'll say this: UCLA's defense was pretty good all weekend. But obviously, looking at the left side in the infield, where you got Roch and Roman at third base, Roman can move around pretty well at the hot corner. Also has a really, really good arm across the diamond. We're talking about pretty strong, pretty accurate, very rarely misses his throws to the first baseman. So really just looking at that, he's always got the high floor with a good glove. I think there's some power in there. The hit tool's good. Kind of work on getting him a bit more aggressive is kind of where I'm at with him. But again, when you have that kind of like selectivity with him and he hammers the fastball, I always look for fastball success with hitters and pitchers, and he obviously has that. So it's nice to have that, in the fold for him, which I love. He was something like 70, 75, 76 on our college top 100. I think he should solidly be a top 150 player in the entire class, in my opinion. It might change from person to person, whoever you talk to, but that's about where I stand on that one. Here comes the interesting one. Will Gasparino. Here's a funny little stat line. He has 2 singles all year. He has 2. You look at what he's been able to do with the long ball. He has 10 home runs right now, including this one, which I'm going to show it right now. Again, just sorry for the silence on the audio side for this, but again, it's a different swing from what it was last year. Taylor Blake Ward, if you don't follow him on Twitter, go do so. He put together some video I had from him last year because Texas was there last year and was able to see him. Then he went yard. So he kind of clipped together both swings for me, which thank you, Taylor, for doing that. If you happen to listen to this or watch this, you do a fantastic job. I know you always will do well wherever you end up. But, he has more limb control this year. The swing's a little bit different. The hands are in a better position. He's got more control of his levers, which, he's 6'6", 225. He's never had great control of them to begin with. But the thing that I was kind of perplexed on throughout the weekend was, pitchers were trying to stay away from him, which is not the smart thing to do pitching to a guy with that kind of strength and that kind of lever control. Because once he gets those arms extended, he can really put a lashing on the baseball. There's a pitch that Tegan Kuhns threw on Friday, which we'll talk about him later. I thought he was very impressive, but he had a slider like low and away that Gasparino really just put out there at like 107, 431 to dead center. And I was sitting there, it's like, this is not a bad pitch. It's away, but you get the arms extended and have that kind of power. It's really impressive what he was able to do. He also did make up there are a couple of mistake pitches that guys left over the middle that he was able to lambast. There's a couple where his average exit velocity on the weekend was 104.4. 4 home runs, 1 single. It was really impressive what he was able to do. He did whiff on a few sliders, struck out twice on Friday, but did not strike out the rest of the weekend. So there's more control. I do still want to see the hit tool kind of get better. I want to see how pitchers attack him inside too, because with the levers that he has, we mentioned being able to extend your arms and getting to most of your ability there. I think Peyton Bonds is another great example of this, where he gets his arms extended, has massive power, but if you pitch him inside, it's not really going to be a great day at the office. Gasparino kind of fits that same mold for me. So as much as this power display to start the year has been very impressive, I really just want to see how he evolves going into Big Ten play. How do pitchers pitch him inside? Is there a different game plan from the opposing teams? Just to see how does he handle adversity, and how does he handle being pitched inside with the kind of length that he has at the plate? That's something I want to see for myself and for everybody else in the country, to kind of see how he deals with that. But the new swing works. The power is really ticked up. He does play a really good center field too. Lots of range, glides like a gazelle. So there's a lot of stuff to like with Gasparino. But do I think he's a day one prospect? I think there's a definite argument to make there. But again, I just want to see, does this keep up going into Big Ten play? I know they played some really good opponents right now. TCU, UCSD, San Diego State has a couple of really good arms too. They spam spin on them and beat them in the midweek last week. And then obviously the 3-0 gauntlet with the SEC. That was just really, really impressive from UCLA all weekend. On the pitching side, Michael Barnett and Landon Stump weren't really anything to write home about. I think Barnett had the better start. He went 5 innings, did pretty well, and got piggybacked by Wellen Moss, who we're going to talk about here in a minute. But Logan Reddemann, man, USD transfer from San Diego, won the West Coast Conference Pitcher of the Year last year, was the Freshman of the Year the year before. I really walked away impressed with his outing. I understand I didn't put any video of him, and I probably should have, admittedly. But the biggest thing that I took away from him was, it's more fastball velocity. It's a lot of strikes. He had 20 whiffs on the outing, 6 fastball, 11 changeup, 3 slider. 48% chase. He was getting a lot of guys to kind of really chase the pitches out of the zone. Averaged 95.3, which is up a couple ticks from last year. And he gets quality ride with some tail. I think he's going to be more of like a dead zone fastball kind of guy at the next level personally, but there's some traits to kind of love there. Roughly gets about 6 feet of extension, but again, the strikes really, really help him. It really sets up the secondary pitches, which we're going to talk about here. The changeup is the best offering in his arsenal. He had 11 changeup whiffs. It felt like he had a lot more, to be completely honest with you. But that sits around 84 to 85, kind of has similar, kind of movement numbers, kind of like a dead zone fastball, but the IVB is not too far off what the fastball is, but it's really deceptive. Guys really struggle with it. It's a really, really good pitch. Has a cutter in the upper 80s that I thought was pretty impressive, and then obviously has a bigger curveball in the low 80s. But the pitchability is there, the strikes were there. Reddemann looked very, very good against a very talented Tennessee lineup. So, walking away from that, I think Reddemann has really vaulted himself into legitimate day one categories. And I know we had him in like the 90s on our college top 100 board. that is going to change when we start doing a combined board here in a couple weeks. So, you know, some other kind of notes on this UCLA squad that I kind of want to touch on first. Some guys that might really pique your guys' interest as well as scouts' interest already. Cashel Duggar was actually pretty impressive, both behind the plate and behind the plate and also at it. English is hard, people. I apologize. It's not my first language, but it's really, really good catch and throw. He threw out three would be base stealers on Sunday, I do believe. It was really, really impressive. And some of the tags that is middle infielders were making were really impressive too, but they were very accurate, very strong. He beat a couple guys out pretty easily, had a double on the weekend too. So I think Duggar, being in the 7-hole, like we'll mention Gasparino, he's the 8-hole hitter. This is how deep this UCLA lineup is. And they put up 12 against Tennessee, I do believe. They put up 11 against Texas A&M, and then obviously put up 8 against Mississippi State in what was, again, one of the greatest games I've ever seen from a college baseball standpoint. So they are very, very good. They are very much deserving of this number one ranking that they have in the country. And when you have a guy like Duggar, who is a very good defensive catcher and has tools at the plate, I just really like that kind of lineup. It's very deep, very good. On the pitching side, kind of want to touch on a couple guys. Cal Randall might have the best fastball in, if not the West Coast, if not the entire country. It's very, very good. Average 95 and a half on, I believe it was Sunday. It was Sunday, actually. But he also spins it at roughly 2,600 RPMs with 6.5 feet of extension from a 5'2" release height. When you think about Stuff Plus models, that's going to light it up very, very quickly. It gets a really good carry on it with some tail. Also has a couple other pitches like a shorter breaking ball and a changeup. But the fastball is a really good calling card here. I think he gets drafted as a reliever, and fastball success, again, we've talked about it before. I really, really enjoy it. Wyland Moss, also kind of the same deal, has roughly 7 feet of extension on average, which is extremely nutty. Spins the fastball very well. Changeup is diabolically good. Secondary pitch has a good slider as well. So wanted to touch on those guys real quick. Moss is 2027 eligible and should profile as one of the best starters in that class. So want to touch on those guys first. And obviously we're going to move on to the next team, which is Mississippi State. Mississippi State, I understand people were a bit upset with some of the calls in the UCLA game, but do not fool yourself. This is a very, very good program. I think what they showed on Sunday was a very resilient ball club. And I know Brian O'Connor said, I don't like losing. That has been his MO ever since his Virginia days. This is a guy that absolutely hates losing. But they have a very, very solid ball club there. And I think the pitching really stood out this weekend, in my opinion. But we're going to start with the bats first. And obviously the big one, Ace Reese. We talk about Reese and the ability that he has with the bat. I think the bat's the real calling card here. And I'm just going to play the home run that he hit on Saturday for you guys. Now that you've seen it, very, very quick bat, very easy power. We've talked about how his power, it looks like he's flicking the bat out at the ball, essentially. That ball left the bat at like 112 and carried into the right center field bullpen on a line, went 400 feet. So, the bat is the realistic calling card. And, he didn't have the greatest weekend on the box score. Only 2 hits, had the home run, struck out 3 times, had a walk. But, you look at some of the other stuff that he was doing with some lineouts and some fly balls. He was hitting the ball as hard as ever, averaged 102.5 on the exit velocity average throughout the weekend. So the bat's going to play no matter what. He hammers the fastball very well, has some trouble with spin a little bit, which, it's been there for a while. I would imagine it will carry over to pro ball in some capacity. I don't know if it's going to be 40% whiff rate bad, but I think it'll be somewhere around 30 where it's a bit serviceable. But the bat is going to carry the profile here. It's a good hit tool. The power's 60 easy, and it plays at both sides of the field. The thing I kind of want to mention with Ace Reese moving forward is his defensive positioning moving forward. We have him listed as a first base, or not a first baseman, but as a third baseman. Um, there is a non-zero chance that he ends up at first base or even in a left field role moving forward. He has played the outfield before when he was at Houston. But the biggest thing, he's kind of a stiff mover at third base, not very fluid, has good arm strength, but again, you kind of worry about the athlete and the how the body holds up moving forward. He's already pretty big at 6'4", 220. So you kind of look at body management a little bit there. But if the bat is going to continue producing like it has been and putting him at first base is fine, maybe you wait until double A before you make that move, because if it happens any earlier, you start to worry a little bit. But if he starts moving to first base in double A, I think this is a pretty solid bet to have a bat that does pretty well, keep him in the lineup. Let the defense kind of figure its own thing out. I think you could put him both in first base and in the outfield, but I think third base, you let him start there. I don't think he finishes up there as a pro unless the athleticism does get better, and he kind of leans up a little bit. But again, he's one of the best bats in the class for a reason. I think he's a first round talent just on the bat alone. So, excited to see what he's going to be able to do at the next level. The next guy I want to talk about, he's a 2027, and he was at NC State last year, so you probably already know who it is. It's Ryder Woodson. Woodson had a very quiet first game, second and third game, 7 hits. He's a gap-to-gap hitter where he puts up pretty good exit velocities. Brian O'Connor mentioned he put together really good at bats, average of 99.6 on the exit velocities. His double that should have walked off the game against UCLA was one that went over the bullpen and really saved UCLA's bacon on that one, as much as the 3-2 count, the 3-2 strikeout to Aiden Teal kind of really burned a lot of people with the strike call. I will agree. I don't think it was a strike personally. Trying to stay as unbiased as possible, obviously, but sitting there kind of watching the game, it really wasn't a strike. I think the pitch before was probably a better pitch to be rung up on personally. But again, we're here to talk about draft, not about that part. But kind of look at what he's able to do. He did very good. He has a good glove at shortstop, but there's some whiff concerns for me. Had a lot of whiffs against sliders throughout the weekend. So he's got a year to kind of clean it up a little bit. He's 2027 eligible. Again, I think he's going to be a pretty solid bat for next year. But the things I want to talk about with the 2027 class with this ball club is their glutton of sophomore arms. I've been on record saying that I think next year's college pitching class is going to be one of the best in history. It looks very, very good at this stage in the game. And they pitched 3 sophomores that are 2027 eligible next year, in Ryan McPherson, Thomas Valincius, and Duke Stone. So I kind of want to start with McPherson because he put together the best start of the weekend for me. 7 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned run. He did have 3 walks. Granted, he did have a lot of time on the bench in that first game because through the first 4 innings, him and Cole Carlon were on a absolute just pitcher's duel. They were going they were putting up zeros for zeros, punches being thrown essentially in a figurative form. But once we got to like the 5th and the 6th, where Mississippi State was putting up a bunch of runs against Arizona State's pitching staff after Carlon had a cramp and left the game, command obviously goes a little bit, and those long waits kind of do take a toll on the pitcher. But the biggest thing that really stood out to me, 96 mile an hour fastball average, gets really, really good IVB on it with some tail, roughly about 18 to 19 inches of vertical carry. He does have 2 changeups that I was looking at through film where I was pretty impressed with what I was seeing. So I'll play the film here to kind of show you guys what I'm talking about. And again, if you're listening to audio only, I apologize. But, he's got a traditional changeup, and what I felt like was a split. He really kills spin on it, roughly averages around 1,000, had a couple of sub 1,000, RPM changeups that he was throwing. And there was a lot of, talk about, this is his best secondary. I very much agree with that. And with McPherson, there's just going to be a lot of stuff to like. It's very compact, very athletic delivery. He repeats very well, really good fastball command. Change of command's been there. The biggest thing I kind of want to look for moving forward is a more viable breaking ball. He had a mid 80s breaker that somebody had told me had just started throwing like last week. It was basically a curveball like 83, 84 that guys were just really, really struggling to hit. But he was trying to land it for strikes, kind of lost the command a little bit at times. And there are some times where I just felt like there were some struggles to kind of spin it a little bit, but it's gotten better. It was averaging close to -9, -10 IVB, so it's basically a mid 80s curveball that does need a little bit more refinement to it. He's got a tighter slider as well, but again, the main talking point here is the fastball and the changeups. I just really, really love those pitches. The last pitch of that sequence that I just showed you guys, the Dominic Smaldino 7th inning at bat. Where he just basically threw a demonic. I thought it was a splitter personally, but on the flow broadcast, it just straight up looked like it was running in on his hands. It really was just diving to the dirt at such a really vicious bite. It was really, really impressive. I thought it was the best pitch he had in the entire outing. Moving on to Valincius, he had 5 1/3, 4 hits, 2 earned, 1 walk, 7 Ks. The calling card is going to be the mid 90s fastball. When you look at what he has, he was averaging 95 across the entire outing. The thing is, it's not a hitter that's going to miss bats. We're looking at a bowling ball sinker that he commands to both sides of the plate. You're either going to get rung up called strike 3, or it's going to set up the secondaries, primarily the mid 80s slider. That was a very vicious pitch where it basically had roughly 7 to 8 inches of sweep, had some lift to it. Guys were just really not touching it. It was his best pitch throughout the outing. I think it's plus at the next level. And having the ability to locate the fastball wherever you'd like and kind of bully guys with it too is really impressive. He has a deeper curveball outside the slider. He did get 2 changeup lifts as well. He's got a pretty decent running changeup as well. So yeah, he's another guy in next year's class where I don't think he's as upside laden as McPherson. I think McPherson's one of the better arms in the class and probably ends up being in the top 2 picks if he not top 2 picks, but top 2 rounds rather, to where I think he's going to be very impressive. Valincius is going to be more maybe like a reliever at the next level, but it's very compact delivery and will again bully you with the fastball. Here's a slider, have fun. Duke Stone was maybe the most interesting guy of these 3. Look at the stat line: 3 2/3, 5 hits, 3 earned, 0 walks, 2 Ks. Not very impressive. However, when you kind of look at the data, he was up to 97. Huge extension. We're talking about 7 feet on average. Even with the breaking balls, it's closer to 6.5 feet. That's really, really impressive for any arm at the amateur level. So to see that is pretty impressive. Fastball has huge ride and has some tail to it, but it really didn't miss any bats over the weekend, unfortunately. But the changeup's really, really good, has negative IVB, so it might be more of a kick change. I got to look at the grip a little bit, but it kill spins very well, up to 90, I do believe, and he's got a slider with some lift and some sweep to it that I really like. So kind of looking at what he is, he's definitely got the polish. I think he's going to be potentially a first rounder, most likely a second rounder next year. Kind of got to watch the film again, kind of look at it, but the change is really good. The fastball has some qualities to it that people will like. The extension's really impressive. So yeah, just talking about those 3 arms, looking at what 2027 has, they're going to be part of that class, and it looks very, very good from this chair. I really do think that we're going to be looking at a pretty generational college pitching, crop next year, and it's going to be the clear strength of that draft class when we get to it. But overall, when we're talking about Mississippi State, if you look at that UCLA game and understand that, yes, they did lose on a bad call, but there's a lot of other factors you look at where, if Ryder Woodson's double doesn't go over the fence, they win that ball game. They really fought and clawed back even after having 3 runs scored against them in the top of the 10th. They hit a 2-run bomb from Reed Stallman. He had 2 home runs on the Sunday game. They fought very, very well. So if you're a Mississippi State fan watching this, just hope I was very impressed with your ball club this weekend. I think you're one of the better ball clubs in the country. You have a great coach in Brian O'Connor. I really do think that this is an Omaha caliber team, and seeing what I saw against UCLA, this is definitely going to be a team to watch out for throughout the year. I think they could be a national seed. Moving on to the next team, kind of going for the hometown club, I guess if we want to call it that. Texas A&M, not really hometown. College Station is a couple hours south, but again, just kind of want to call them the hometown team because they had basically every single night game on the weekend, and that's traditionally what the hometown team has gotten. Texas had it last year. So yeah, I wanted to basically put that in there. Basically rambling at this point, but anyways, you guys enjoy my rambling sometimes. But Chris Hacopian, I want to start off with him in this swing in particular. You can look at how he kind of adjusts his swing a little bit. And again, if you're watching this and you see it, the adjustment comes very, very late. It was a changeup for Brett Renfro, left the bat at like 106, went 424. It was really impressive what he was able to do. And this is with a tweak back. He wasn't 100% going into this. I think in the second at bat, he said he tweaked something in his back, and they pulled him out for the rest of the weekend. So he only had that one at bat where he looked very, very comfortable, didn't miss a beat. It was a second pitch back from it too. So, looking at what he can be moving forward, I think Chris Hacopian is very underrated, in my opinion, because the hit tool, we talked about it last year at Maryland. He missed just 4 fastballs all year. It was really impressive what he was able to do. And these were in zone fastballs too. He had a 4% whiff rate on him. It's a really manageable breaking ball whiff rate as well. So like you've got the hit tool and the contacts there. The power is also there. I think it might be 55 to 60. And he's shown in the sample sizes he's had it in the field before the injury that he was pretty well with range, has a good arm. I think he has a more viable option to maybe be a shortstop to stop the next level, but probably moves to third base given the body and the size. So want to get that out of the way. Chris Hacopian, again, I hope he's 100% moving forward because he's a very exciting bat for this ball club. Want to move on to Caden Sorrell. We've talked about him in the past where we want to see the whiff rates come down. We want to see the approach get better. Oh, we all know the power's there. It's he worked primarily opposite field this weekend, which was interesting. But he hit a ball 101, like 374 down the line. He knew it off the bat too. I'll play that clip here for you guys. It's really such a sweet swing. We talk about maybe a Jared Kelenic comp, and that's just based off the body and the swing alone. But again, I do see it. It's got the power. He's very confident in his swings, but the problem is the whiffs have been pretty troubling to date. Had, I believe, 4 Ks on the weekend, but still hit the ball on an average of 98 exit velocity. So, looking at what he was able to do, still has some impact. The Ks are obviously going to be part of the package moving forward. But you're talking about big bat speed, big power to all fields. That's going to be the main prize. And then obviously the defense and center is going to be impressive. He's made some very good plays in the past. I remember specifically against South Carolina as a freshman. I can't remember who the batter was, but I remember it was against Tanner Jones and thought it was a home run. Somehow this kid was able to bring it back in left field. I don't know how he was able to. The glove essentially, like here's the wall, gloves over it essentially. That's a nice bruise I got there, by the way. Either which way, stole it. Fantastic play. He's made a couple of highlight reel plays, so I think he's going to be a very valuable glove. Has some speed to him. Again, the hit tool, will it come around? We'll see. But the whiffs right now are still a bit concerning for me to say that he's like a top 10 talent in the class, but I would say first round, definitely. Here's one that's going to be maybe a bit controversial. And I know when we talk about consensus where I kind of, I stray away from consensus a little bit, mainly because there's some things I look at and I do worry. Gavin Grahovac, I'm really curious to see what we see moving forward. Obviously missed last year with a shoulder injury. Only played like 5 or 6 games before that, but had a fantastic freshman year, SEC freshman of the year. Basically was a big catalyst at the top of that lineup to help that team get to the Omaha or the College World Series finals in Omaha. So the biggest thing though, for me, kind of a quiet weekend, only 2 hits, had a strikeout and a walk. My biggest issue is he's already at first base and he's a bigger kid. I believe 6'2", 230. And when you're looking at a guy that size and the athleticism, it does worry me a little bit that he's already made that transition to first base, which obviously the bat will have to perform. He did have 7 whiffs across the weekend, was chasing at a high clip. all the whiffs were against secondary pitches. He's had success against the fastball in the past, but obviously had struggles against higher velocity. So I'm wondering if, as we go through the year, there's more of a change and he's able to hit the fastball a bit better than he did as a freshman. But again, I do worry about what the bat ends up being moving forward. It's going to have a lot of pressure if he's basically locked into first base. I've heard people say he might move to third base as the season goes along, which would be great. But he's been stiff there in the past, kind of like an Ace Reese profile, except I think Grahovac's probably a tier below what Reese is. So I've seen other outlets put him in the first round. I personally don't see it right now. That's just me. I really do think that when you look at it in the future, this is a guy that's a first base only with power. The hit tool is going to be streaky at best. But again, there's stuff to love here. You go back to that freshman year, and he was fantastic, even with some of the underlying traits that were kind of concerning under the hood. But, I still think somebody maybe takes him within the first 5 rounds. I'm just not sure where at this point, but it's definitely not the first round or the second round for me. And I do apologize to people that view that differently. But, at the end of the day, I'm just really concerned on where the trajectory of his bat's going and where his defensive home is going to be moving forward. So there's a lot of stuff to kind of worry about there. Moving past to the pitchers, A&M's had a lot of starting pitching success this year. Kind of like what they've had. They've had Shane Sdao came back from Tommy John. He missed last year, came back as a senior this year. Weston Moss obviously pitched Saturday, but didn't really perform all that well. And then Aiden Sims on Sunday, who he's a very interesting guy, spins the ball very well, but command's still working and is still a work in progress. But I want to touch on Sdao mainly because it was a complete game shutout, 6 innings run rule, obviously, because it was 10-0 final. He's very interesting, very slider heavy. There's a lot of angle and crossfire to his delivery that, it makes it tough for batters at the plate, especially lefties, because it's going to be a very tough lineup with the angles he creates. Very slider heavy. I noticed slider cutter prevalent throughout the start. Fastball touched 94 early on, kind of sat in 90, 92 throughout the rest of the outing. But the cutter is more of the tighter of the two, where it gets about 12 inches of vertical, some cut to it, kind of plays like a slower fastball a little bit. However, the slider gets a ton of lift to it, has about 10 inches of sweep, averages around 81, 82. Those 2 pitches alone, and I'm going to play the video here so you can get an idea what the angle is like for some of these guys, where he's pitching essentially from the first base mound, and guys are just really struggling to adjust to the angle. And that's for both lefties and righties alike. There's a lot of strikes there. I think personally, with Sdao, you're getting a guy who's going to be one of the better senior signs in this class. I think he can get you value somewhere in the 3rd to 5th round, save you some money, but also get a pretty solid arm in and of itself. This was a guy that had a really good sophomore year. Unfortunately, had an injury, had to have Tommy John, came back, and this year he looks very, very good. Just thinking about what he could be with the projection he has, I think he's going to be a very solid player moving forward. Moving past him, Clayton Freshcorn, we've had him on the College Top 100 before, somewhere in the latter quarter of it, but he came in on Sunday. Again, we've talked about low launch heaters, and he kind of fits that mold a little bit for me. 3 fastball whiffs, average 93 with a 5.5, or not 5.5, but 5.2 release height with over 6 feet of extension with good carry and some tail to it. It's a really, really good fastball from a guy that's like 6'2", 180. He's very light. And what I mean by that is like very mobile, has a very up-tempo delivery, there's not a ton of recoil to it. So I think there's a chance where you let him start the next level, but it's a very good fastball nonetheless with a couple of secondary pitches that do lag behind a little bit. But if you're going off fastball traits alone, this is a guy that's going to fit some model teams' MO very well, especially if you're like a Texas Ranger fan. I could totally see this being a Texas Rangers pick moving forward. But that's really all I have on Texas A&M. We're kind of halfway through here. We got 3 more teams in Tennessee, Arizona State, and Virginia Tech. So I want to touch on Tennessee first. And the biggest thing that I want to touch on with Tennessee is Tegan Kuhns. Tegan Kuhns had an adventurous freshman year. He's a draft eligible sophomore, goes to the Cape, walks one guy, strikes out 20. So we're thinking, is this a mirage? It's not. I can tell you right now it is not. He looked very, very good, despite the fact that the box score is going to tell you, he gave up 4 home runs. The thing that really stood out to me is he didn't walk a guy. Very good command throughout the start. Maybe a bit too much strikes, but he really pitched better than what the box score was. He took out 10 across 6 innings too. The biggest thing that really stood out to me was the fastball. Look at what he had last year. The fastball was good, but it was kind of misused. And this is the fastball that's going to be a stuff monster moving forward. League of Stuff Plus models had him around like 115, 120 on the fastball. This is coming from a 6 feet of extension from 5.5 feet, 95 fastball average with 20 IVB and some tail to it. It's a really, really good fastball. Not many guys were able to touch it up. He has a 39% whiff rate on the fastball throughout the year, which is very, very impressive for what he is right now. 6'3", buck 90, pretty projectable, really good body control. There's not a ton of stuff to hate with him. He had 6 fastball whiffs, had 5 on the slider and 3 on the curveball. The slider's at 83 and the curveball's at 78, but the shapes aren't too dissimilar. I think they're just 2 different pitches with similar shape. The depth is pretty similar. I think the slider is closer to -4, but the curveball is more to -6 with some sweet to it. Has a cutter, or not a cutter, but like a splitter, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. He has a splitter in the back pocket to throw as well. But this is a guy that I've had scouts tell me this is definitely a top 50 pick in this year's class already, just with the fastball quality and the command that he has. It looks very, very impressive. I think Tegan Kuhns is going to be a guy to watch on draft day where he might be a first rounder. I genuinely do think that he could reach that tier of player. But at this point, I don't see this pick going. I don't see him going any farther than past, pick 50. I think this is a very, very good profile. He's really turned a corner. I really, really do like Tegan Kuhns. And again, pitched a lot better than what he did, than what the box score would tell you with the 4 earned runs and 6 hits. 10 strikeouts and 0 walks is really the big story here. With the fastball traits that he has, he's going to be a very, very good player, I think, at the next level. I want to talk about Henry Ford, too. Henry Ford, obviously drafted as a sophomore last year at Virginia. The biggest thing I kind of noticed with him was the difference in how his swing is. It's a lot looser. It's a lot easier. This year, he's not as tight and he's not as stiff. Like last year, he was kind of relying upon making sure he was synced up. This year, it's a lot easier. It's a lot more athletic. The hands are better. He still got similar power. He was hitting balls up to 110 this weekend. Third baseman right now, they're playing him over there, and I think he's got the tools to stick there. The arm's a little inaccurate, but he moves pretty well for his size, maybe a bit stiff at times. But it's better than what, we'll talk about Ace Reese, where he was stiff. I think it's better than what Ace Reese was. Somewhere in between Reese and Roman Martin. I think Roman Martin was the best third base defender throughout the weekend. But, it's pretty impressive what they've been able to do to fix that swing. There's definite leverage in bat speed. It looks better. It looks smoother. I'm a big fan of what he is now. I would not be shocked if somebody hands him a pretty hefty payday if the production really takes another step going into SEC play. I think he's going to be a very good bat this year. Chris Newstrom, another draft eligible sophomore that they have on this Tennessee squad, was really impressive. Had a 4-hit game, I do believe, on Friday. The biggest thing that I kind of really worry about is obviously the strikeouts piled up. He had 4 on the weekend, had 8 whiffs total. The hit tool is not really all that high quality at this moment. But when you look at what the power he's able to do, it's something that you can kind of circle and keep an eye on throughout the year, see how he performs and see if he get drafted. He does have a track record with scouts. This was a guy that, early on in his high school career had a lot of recognition to his name. Didn't really hang on to it throughout his junior and senior years, but he's got the track record. It was nice to see him perform pretty well throughout the weekend, even with some of the strikeout woes. So kind of keep an eye on him throughout the year as a guy who might end up being drafted. I'm not 100% certain if he will, but just want to put the name out there just in case he does. Blaine Brown for next year. This is a guy who comes in from Rice, and I know earlier today he has the lawsuit with Rice's NIL. But moving that aside, this is a guy that I'm pretty high on for 2027. When we do ranks for them, he's going to be somewhere in the top 10 for college side. Big juice. The only problem is I think his swing needs some tinkering. He had some whiffs against higher velocity, and he's also hitting the ball quite a bit on the ground, but he was up to 111 exit velocities. We'll also get on the bump and pump it up to 97, 98 for you. But I think his future is as a bat, and probably put him in right field. Pretty prototypical right field build. He's pretty strong, pretty projectable. Maybe you try him out in center, but I think he is a corner outfielder at the next level at this point. But we've got a year and a half to kind of figure out his profile moving forward. Kind of want to focus on some more pitching here because there are some other guys that really stood out. We're going to go with 2027s, obviously, with Landon Mack, Braden Krenzel, and then obviously Cam Appenzeller. Talked about him as a prep this past year. Gets picked late, goes to school. Start with him. Pretty poised for a freshman. He got put into a pretty big spot late on Sunday, I do believe. Or no, sorry, I was going to say Arizona State. So I do believe it was a Sunday game, but he was averaging 92, got up to 94 with some tail on the fastball. Hasn't added a ton of velocity since getting to campus, but he's very projectable still. Pretty easy delivery. Gets some tail on the pitch given his release height is somewhere around this little area. So it's pretty sidearm, but the slider was really, really disgusting. Hovered around 80. He threw one to Dominic Smaldino, which I thought he was going to hit him on the back leg, but it really tied him up. And it was really, really, really promising seeing what he's able to do. He's got a change up there. He's going to be 2028 eligible, given his age, I do believe. Let me just double check to confirm that actually. Yeah, he will be 2028 eligible. He was 18-5 on draft day this past year. So yeah, it's going to be impressive. I think he'll be a frontline starter for Tennessee in the short-term future. Probably next year, to be completely honest with you. I think he's going to get a lot of run as a freshman this year if he doesn't get injured or anything like that. It's a very promising arm at Rocky Top. Landon Mack, I was really impressed with his performance, even with some of the antics that he had going on. 16 whiffs, fastball cutter, got 14 of that. He averaged 96.7 with the sinker. He's got two different fastball shapes, got about 16 IVB on the four-seamer, but the sinker was primarily his go-to pitch. Has good command of it, really pumped the strike zone with it. Ooh, excuse me. Very good cutter, very tight shape in the upper 80s that guys were really struggling with. He has a curveball and a changeup too, but it was really the fastball cutter that was really, really impressive over the weekend. And then Braden Krenzel averaged 95. That's a velo jump. He was kind of more low 90s last year. He looks bigger. He looks stronger. He has a kind of like a low 80s curveball is what I'm going to profile it as. Has -8 IVB, but it's classified as a slider. On data that you'll see, but I think it is a true curveball. And it is a sinker essentially. So there's a lot of guys here with some of these low releases have some sink to it, but it looked really impressive. He struck out 4, walked 1, looked very, very good. So Tennessee, I think there's some stuff here. Obviously, they lost to Kent State last weekend, but you look at what they have. I think there's still a very solid program, even with Elander at the helm. And the biggest thing too that I kind of want to touch on as well, obviously with Russ Rutgers passing over the past couple of weeks. I know it's been very tough for some Rocky Top fans who had experiences with him. I did have one experience with him that I will cherish for a long time, where he was very nice, very cordial with me in the press box there at Lindsey Nelson. So I want to say my thoughts are with his family on his untimely passing. I hope they're doing well. And rest in peace to Wes. I hope you sleep well, brother, because it was very tough to read the news that he had passed, especially considering the kind of person that he was. He was very, very nice. So want to put that out there. I hope everybody at Rocky Top's doing well post passing with him. So want to move on to Arizona State as we kind of wrap up everything here. The biggest thing that really stood out for me, Arizona State, obviously they took a midweek from Oklahoma, but then obviously went 0-3. However, I thought the team performed better than that at times. Cole Carlon, if he didn't cramp in the 5th inning, he could have gone a lot farther and had a really, really good duel going with McPherson, like I had mentioned earlier. Fastball was up to 98 with steepness, but he was missing bats, had 5 whiffs on the fastball. The bullet slider is obviously his MO, has a 70% whiff rate on the year so far, had 6 throughout the outing. His command kind of struggled with that pitch a little bit, which was a little bit atypical. But he's really relying on those 2 pitches, the fastball and the slider, kind of help him out. He's got feel for a changeup. The changeup is more average in my opinion. It still has some works in progress, but has good fade to it. Kills spin very, very well. He tried to flip in curveballs early to try and steal strikes early in counts. 12 whiffs in total, 5 fastball, 6 slider, 1 changeup. Great fastball command. I thought he looked very, very good, very comfortable in a starting role. So I think there's a chance where somebody's going to let him start at the next level. Maybe he's a reliever just because he's a short extender with some command woes. However, I was really, really impressed with what he was able to do. Again, looked very good early on, struck out 7, and I believe 4 2/3 or 4 1/3 before the velo kind of dipped and he was cramping up. It was hot in that building throughout the weekend. So, I was very impressed with what he had, and I think he's going to be in contention for Southpaw number 1 on the college ranks this year. And we'll talk about more of these guys moving forward. Alex Overbay, another guy that is going to be dropped eligible this year. This is Lyle's son, by the way. So yes, you do feel old. I feel old. I'm 27, and I know who Lyle Overbay is. So, yay. But the biggest thing for him, topped out at 98 with a good fastball, had 2 distinct breakers with a slider and a cutter, struck out 6 in 3 innings. Very clean, very, very good overall. The slider is going to have more of a more depth overall than the cutter. Cutter was up to 88, slider was up to 84. It looks very, very good throughout. I was really impressed with what he was able to put together. The biggest thing with the bats, Landon Harrison looked pretty good. Only 4 whiffs. He was pretty aggressive, but pretty flat playing. Had 2 doubles. Has some versatility defensively. He's a 2027 guy. So I'm not really sold on an opinion on where he is defensively moving forward. I got to do more research on that. But he was playing second base, had some left field experience. So he's been plugged in and out of the dirt and in the grass. So it's interesting to see where his final defensive home is. But the bat's pretty legit. I mean, not a ton of whiff. He's not going to be a guy that hits for a ton of power, but he does have some surprising pop in that frame as a left-handed hitter. PJ Mount Zordis, probably mispronounced that. I apologize, PJ, if I did, but gap-to-gap hitter, has some power to him. Some whiff concerns for me. He's always had that. But the glove is fantastic. I think it's a grade below what Roch is, so maybe above average, maybe plus if somebody's really, really in on the glove. Made a couple of really tough plays that I thought he was going to get the outs on. A couple diving plays where he just didn't come up with the ball because it hit his arm instead of the glove. But he does have a high floor with the glove experience and the fluidity at the shortstop position. I think he's going to be more of a glove first, maybe defensive replacement. Maybe let him, if the bat improves at the next level, you kind of let him start. But I think he's going to be more of like a defensive guy moving forward. And then the last guy I want to talk about, Dominic Smaldino. I think it's 60 power. I was talking with Joe Doyle where I was like, is it 55? Is it 60? He said 60 because he's popping EVs of like 112 this year. The hands are different. Talked about Henry Ford where the hands are kind of lower and a lot looser. His is the same way. He had hands up here before. They're kind of down here and a little bit more fluid, more loose. The whiffs are still a pretty big concern, but, 6 power is something not to scoff at. His first base profile, so obviously the power is going to be the carrying tool there. But I do want to see the whiffs kind of show up once we get the Big 12 play. But I think he's going to be a guy that kind of watch for a little bit. The power is, again, going to be the carrying tool in that profile. Last team I want to touch on, Virginia Tech. Again, another team that went 0 for 3. They're kind of going through it a little bit. John Svetch has mentioned that the team's not very good at the moment. However, there's still some highlight guys I want to talk about on this little segment here. The defense was fun. There was a couple times in the Renfro start where defense really stood out and saved his bacon a little bit because there was some hard contact that he was giving up. But going to Renfro, 73% strikes throughout the outing. I think he may have been throwing too many strikes, which caused some of the higher in contact. But he showed a lot more in a tank that I was really anticipating. Up to 98, averaging 95.5 on the fastball velocity. Excellent pitchability. Has really, really good extension from a kind of a higher release point around 6 feet. But that was really the biggest thing is the fastball looks revamped. It looks very, very good. And I think that really helps his profile because he was more of a guy that sat like 92, 95 last year. Now that we've kind of kicked it up to 98, I think there's going to be more of a guy that's, has the pitchability, has more upside to him. I think he's going to be a back-end starter. The cutter was very, very good. The changeup was good. He really relies on those 2 pitches heavily when he goes to pitchability. Cutter at 6 whiffs, changeup at 2, curveball at 82, 19 inches of vertical break. Changeup's more like 7-11. So there's There's a vertical component to the separation on that changeup compared to the fastball and the velocity separation. Mid 80s changeup. He does have a curveball again at 82 with negative 11 IVB, more of kind of a show me pitch. But there's a separate slider from the cutter that had like 10 inches of sweep on it. So it's got like 6 different pitches. I think he's a guy that throws again the kitchen sink, kind of a back end guy, but he's got viability now with the higher velocity, which I'm excited about because I really liked Renfroe as a sophomore when he was only topping out like 96. So this is a welcome development for me. I think he's the guy that kind of gets in like the second or third round. Virginia Tech's had a couple of really good arms over the past few years. We talked about Drew Hackenberg. Um, he was the one of the first guys to really show up on that. I think Renfro's number 2. The guy behind him that I'm really high on, Ethan Grimm, who was their Sunday guy, is a true freshman. 8 fastball whiffs on the day, was up to 95, average 92 with pretty big carry out of the hand. He had a lot of fastball success as a high schooler last year. He's very young for the class too. He's going to be roughly 21 years old exactly on draft day in 2028. But I was really encouraged with the fastball success that he had. Slider 81, kind of a shorter, low 80s kind of pitch, but still got a couple whiffs, and then there's a cutter and a changeup there. I really think he's going to have a pretty solid career, probably next in line of these Virginia Tech arms that has some success to him. Moving forward, if they can keep him in Blacksburg, that's fantastic for Doug Gideon, those guys over in Blacksburg. One guy on the offensive side that really stood out to me was freshman Ethan Ball. There's some really, really good freshmen in the ACC this year. I think Ball is going to be one of the better ones. He had some draft stock to him last year. We put him in the top 315 to end the year. Obviously didn't get signed, but it's pretty big pop for his frame. He's not the biggest guy in the field, but he was getting up to 110 exit velocities with a home run to dead center. Had a couple of 105 miles an hour exit velocities as well. So there's pop in the swing. Lots of opposite field damage. So he's definitely not pulling the ball as much as you'd like to see. So there's going to be an approach change moving forward to see how much more power he can kind of tap into. But seeing what we've seen now, pretty encouraging. There are going to be whiffs. There's going to be chase rates to him. It is a pretty aggressive hitter. But kind of looking what he can be, I think he's a pretty offensive-minded second baseman. Can probably maybe put him in center field if you want to try him out there. But I think he's going to be an infielder. But again, power over hit. I was really encouraged by what I saw. Had a really, really big weekend for the Virginia Tech team. So now that we're out of the way there, I want to touch on some national notes. Before we kind of wrap up the show, it's been a while since we've kind of talked together, and we're an hour into this, so I'll try and make this quick. But I want to touch on a couple of guys, the USC starters specifically, Mason Edwards and Grant Govil. Those are 2 guys that have really, really been good for the Trojans this year. Mason Edwards coming off of 7 hitless innings. Grant Govil has already pitched part of a combined no-no this year. These guys have been very, very good. Mason Edwards up to 96, 97 with a hammer breaking ball. Grant Govil is going to be more of a guy that has a high IVB fastball from a higher release point, but he's a smaller guy. So getting about 22, 23 inches of vertical on it with a good curveball and a couple other pitches. The change was pretty good too. I would not be shocked if either of those guys are, top 50. I think Mason Edwards could be the best southpaw in the country. Have already written about that, how he could be the number 1 southpaw in this class as a college guy. Grant Govil is going to be a draft eligible sophomore. He's going to have some viability to him. So I'm excited to see what those 2 can do throughout the year. It's very, very good at this point. Moving past those 2 guys, there's another couple guys I want to touch on. Chris McHugh at NC State has looked very, very good to start the year. He's tapping into more power. He's always had the success of pulling the pitches inside, especially, and he's continued to do that. He's hitting like 450 on the year. Looks very, very good. Justin LeBron had a home run as well over the weekend. I know Carlos Collazo went out to see him and missed the Sunday matchup between UCLA and Mississippi State. But, LeBron has looked a lot better, not whiffing a ton on sliders this year. He's walking a lot more. He's a lot more aggressive on the base pass, really good glove. If there is going to be a guy that challenges Roch Cholowsky for 1-1 this year, I think LeBron is the primary candidate at this point. I think he's the second best player in this class at the moment. I think he's going to be very, very good. Moving past that, Jackson Flora, we've talked about it before. That new changeup is disgusting. That is the biggest takeaway I've kind of taken away there, and apologies for the stutter. But looking at what he's been able to do with that, um, it's a kick change, low spin, kill spin on it, get 7 feet of extension on the fastball. Has been up to 98, 99, 100 even against UCS or not UCSB. He pitches for UCSB against Southern Miss, who is a very, very, very good mid major this year. I think they're going to win the Sun Belt at this stage. But the change has been a really, really big difference maker for him. Having that pitch, he didn't really have it a year ago. Had a traditional circle change, now has that kick change, and is just absolutely devastating. He kind of floats in there like a knuckleball a little bit, and it just going back and watching some of it from the start against Southern Miss, it was truly disgusting, and he really leaned against it heavily this last start. So I think he might legitimately be the best pitcher in this class now. I think he's kind of fluky, which is not a Fluky's fault. He's been hurt. You're going to see how much longer it is before he kind of comes back, but he did look very good the first weekend when I saw him. But I think Fluky is no longer SP1 in this category. It is Flora, and Flora just looks really, really, really good. Moving past that, on the college side, Hernandez has been impressive. He finally put everything together, had a 7-inning start with a lot of success against not Xavier. I can't remember who they played this past weekend. They played UTA. No, it was UTA. It was UTA because they were almost complete game shut out against their Friday guy. But he looked very, very good on Saturday. I was really impressed with Hunter Dietz. Going past that, I thought obviously Dax Whitney, fantastic as always. As somebody put it to me, it's like watching Felix Hernandez pitch on the Seattle Mariners in the early 2010s when he won the Cy Youngs with losing records on the win-loss, and people had a whole fiasco about that. But he looked very, very good throughout the year. I think he's the best pitching prospect over the past few years. It looks very, very impressive on paper at the moment. Moving past that, Caden Vogelpohl looks a lot better. The K rate has come down significantly. Colin Ritchie's hitting the ball to cover off the baseball very, very well right now. Looking at the bottom half of the top 100 that we had posted about a month ago, Will Gasparino is going to get a big jump. I think when you look at a guy like Dawson Montesa, who was a very, very, very close cut on the top 100, him and LJ Mercurius, they probably both looked at that board and said, I took that personally. LJ's looked very, very good. The fastball has been revamped. I really, really have looked forward to seeing that fastball take the next step forward. I think it has a very good changeup. The cutters looks very good as well. Dawson Montesa is the biggest piece here. Obviously, West Virginia let Chase Meyer go the other day. But I really do think Montesa has taken the next step forward. He went from Sunday to Saturday. Now he's a Friday guy. Pitched 7 innings, struck out 11 against Kennesaw State. Looked very, very good. Been up to 97. Really good ride on the fastball. The changeup, cutter, and the curveball had been very impressive to start the year. So I'm very, very high on Montesa. I think he's going to be a star at the next level, and I think he's going to be a top 100 pick at this point. If he keeps it up, I'm very bullish on the profile. Evan Dempsey is another guy who's going to push himself into that category too now. 3,000 RPM curveball. The fastball has improved. He's got a really good velo jump that's got him into the mid-90s now. He's very young for the class too, so I think he's going to be a guy that really sticks out on that front. Thomas Burns has maybe the best fastball in the country. We talked about, Tegan Kuhns having a really good fastball. I think Thomas Burns really just takes it up to another level. He's been up to 99 this spring already. And it's really just a IVB monster. He has a cutter and a curveball and a change to go with it, but he's really just going to be drafted as a potentially high rising or a quick rising reliever with really, really good fastball quality to him. Devin Sheeran's another guy, very weird angles from LSU, but he's gonna really show you, 99 out of the back pocket, has a good slider in the mid 80s. Jacob Duden, the last guy we're going to talk about here, very impressive. Actually, he won't be the last guy we'll talk about, but I'm going to talk about him anyways. But Jacob Duden really, really looked impressive going into the starting role. He's had, I believe, just 2 walks on the year. The command's really improved. The fastball is never going to miss bats, but he's been up to 98. The slider's the bread and butter there. I still think he's a reliever. However, seeing this as a starter is promising. And then the Cam Johnsons on Oklahoma. Cameron Johnson, has looked fantastic in his new role as a starter. The command looks better. The changeup looks good. The fastball is a bowling ball. He really pitched off it heavily this last start. But I think that as we go on, I think the change is going to be more prevalent in that arsenal. The slider's not great, has never been all that great, but he plays off the angle. I think he's going to be very good. And Camden Johnson is a 70 grade runner, very, very good bat the ball, never going to hit for power, but this is a guy that scouts are going to love. The play style is amazing. I think he's going to be a guy that goes somewhere in the top 125, 150 picks when we get to that point in the season. And the last thing I want to talk about, the prep list that I'm going to be working on. I'm hoping to have it out in the next week or so. So I do apologize for everybody that's been kind of held out on that. Just a lot of stuff going outside of here that I've not really been able to control. But at the end of the day, I want to put out the best content I can for you guys, and I'm going to do just that for you. So looking at some guys that are going to make the list that maybe aren't on everybody's list. Julian Garcia for St. John Bosco. We've talked about some of the bats that they have, and James Clark and Jaden Jackson. Garcia is young for the class. He's been up to 96, has a good changeup, good curveball. The fastball could be plus at the end of the day. I think he's going to be a very solid arm moving forward. If he's not a starter, he's a very good power reliever. Brady Snow, another guy, very good body control, has the command, going to grow into it as he gets more mature physically. Already up to 97 with a interesting breaking ball. It kind of blends between two shapes, but spins it very well, has a good change to go with it. I think he might be a guy that ends up going to get to college and turns into a really good starter as is. Moving past that, William Cutshaw for Seneca High School in South Carolina. I was actually going to go see him this weekend. They play at the Georgetown IP Classic in South Carolina, but has some things come up, and obviously it's a 4-hour drive for me, so it's kind of tough right now to make that kind of commitment. But however, he's been a fantastic bat to start the year. Really young for the class of 1801. He has Brazilian heritage, I believe. If not, it's Panamanian. It's one of the two. But he's a guy that has a power uptick. The bat the ball is there. He's a good defender at shortstop. He's going to be a guy to watch throughout the spring. I think he's going to have a very good year. Rock Arnold, he reclassed from 2027, was going to be 19 and 9 months in 2027. Now going to be 18 and 9. Oklahoma State commit with good power. The plane of the swing is pretty good too. He's going to hit power, has some good bat the ball as well. Anthony Chavez, Mount Carmel, Illinois. I want to talk about him a little bit. He's a guy that's going to be 18 years old on draft day, just 18 exact. Illinois commit, so you kind of look at that. That might be an easier one to kind of sign someone out of. He performed pretty well, has more walks and strikeouts on the summer circuit last year, and he went to area coach select in Texas, did a very good job there, has good bat to ball skills with feel to pull the baseball and lift. I think he's going to be a guy that really pops up this year. I really do think when you look at it, somebody gives him like a 4th, 5th round bonus signing, probably takes it. And with the youth, he's going to be very model friendly this year. Some other guys to talk about: Don Batista from Oswego East in Illinois, UIC commit. A lot more power in that bat than you would expect from a guy of that size at 6 foot 180, or sorry, 6'1", 186. And another guy I'm really, really high on as well will be Jet Berry. I think he's going to be, he's Jacob's brother, by the way, if anybody was not aware of that, but he's pretty aptly named, has really, really good speed, bat the ball skills are there from both sides of the plate, pretty aggressive, going to have some surprising power. But I think he's going to be a very, very good top of the lineup guy with, a chance. Last guy I want to talk about, Brody Bumia from Bishop Feehan High School up in Massachusetts, Texas commit, 6'9", 255. Massive kid coming back from an elbow injury. Very good basketball player. Actually put 41 up against a rival high school a couple of weeks ago, but now he's up to 99 from the left side with 7 feet of extension. You can sign me up on that from a low release. It's going to be a stuff plus monster, has a really good changeup and has a breaking ball to go with it. So I'm really excited to see what Bumia can do. I think he's going to be a guy that we're going to push up pretty highly once we release the prep board. Jarrett Grindlinger is going to be a guy that reclassed that I wasn't able to write about. Going to be rivaling Rocco Maniscalco over at 17 and 2 months on draft day. He's uncommitted, probably isn't going to matter at the end of the day. He's probably going to be a really good two-way, been up to 96 with a good breaking ball, but it can also hit hit for average, has some surprising power in there, glides pretty well, gonna be a corner outfielder. I'm really excited to see what he can do. There's a lot of really good 2027s at reclass this year, so I'm excited to see how they kind of fare, uh, come draft day. But that's kind of the end of it. To kind of give you a small preview on the top 100 list and some other guys that really showed out. One more guy I forgot on the college side, Ryan Peterson from Sam Houston State. 6.5 foot of extension, been up to 95, has a good breaking ball as well. So I wanted to squeeze him in there before we kind of end everything here. So if you're still here listening to my voice, not sure why you are, but at the same time, I appreciate you if you did stay and listen to everything. It was a very exciting weekend. We're going to go back to the writing when we go to Virginia at UNC this weekend. Going to be there Friday and Sunday. I'm not going to be there Saturday. If you had seen on Twitter, I'm going to be speaking at the Friends One Day Convention in Raleigh. Very excited to work with those kids again for stuttering advocacy. Gonna be speaking on an adult panel, helping with signups, helping out with activities. So if you happen to be in the Raleigh area and you want to join us, the link I have put on Twitter to sign up, it is $70. I do believe to sign up right now. However, it is well worth the investment. I meet a lot of really good people, a lot of people I've really associated well with and have great respect for. Being able to go on a panel and speak to kids and adults too, who are kind of trying to find ways to help their child is very impressive. One guy, this isn't baseball related, but Casey Concepcion, who was an NC State wide receiver, went to Texas A&M. He struggled with a stutter over the past couple of weeks, especially at the draft combine, and people were mocking him for it. But he stood up and did a very, very good job of painting the picture of the struggles of a person who stutters. And I was really, really drawn by his responses. I thought it was very mature of him. He's got people in his corner. Really going to be talking about this week as well. So, again, if you're in Raleigh, want to join us, you're free to. We're going to be, I can't remember the name of the school specifically off the top of my head. I know it was at the public school system before. It's going to be at an elementary school downtown by a Starbucks on Person Street, I do believe. So again, feel free to join us if you'd like. If not, I'm not going to judge you either which way. But it would truly mean a lot to us if people do show up or do pay attention to it. Something I've really struggled with for a long time. I wanted to touch on it before we end the podcast here. But hopefully we're going to have more episodes moving forward. Again, thank you all for listening. This was a very, very fun episode to record, even if it was solo. Hope to have Jared and the crew back on another episode moving forward. But until then, we'll see you.